How's everybody doing today or tonight? Uh, Looks like it's a good time outside. A nice day here in the state of Indiana. It's like 70 degrees. So that's definitely a good temp for us. Once again, I don't know how many people here. Just give me one in the chat. I think I'm looking good. It's going to talk about AWS Organization. It's going to be something short tonight. AWS builds on landing zones, which builds on the top of AWS control tower. So we're going to do organizations, then control, then landing zones, then control tower. So that's when we start labbing a little bit on the control tower. What's up, Shango? Check your email. I finally responded to your PCI. Thanks for the one. Let me know if you need any more information on AWS for PCI. My bad. I'm gonna be a little late checking on my email sometime, but I did respond to your PCI question. Just let me know if you need anything else. Once again, let's hit that AWS organization. It's gonna be something short tonight. We're gonna keep building on to it. That's kind of where the governance come in. AWS Organization is a service that allows you to centrally manage and govern multiple AWS accounts under a single organization. It helps business scale, manage environments with clear building, security, and policy controls. So we're definitely going to deal into those policy controls. I think that's where the governance piece comes in for that. And we'll look at a couple examples of that. Key concept, organizational root. Top level container for all your accounts. Accounts can be organized units with OUs or individual AWS accounts, including some management accounts, formerly known as master accounts that controls the org. Organizational units, logical groups of accounts such as dev, staging, and prod. Core securities in there, logging's in there. Hierarchical OUs can contain other OUs or accounts. Service control policies. That's what we're going to get in our governance. Policies that set permission boundaries for accounts or OUs. Example, prevent users of certain services like EC2s and specific OUs. Right, so security controls, we can put boundaries. Like developers, we can say you can only use certain EC2s or certain Lambdas. Right, so they won't give us a big bill, only smaller databases. So once again, you could put permission boundaries across your OUs, similar as in Active Directory. But once again, we're going to dig down to it. That's kind of some of your standard organizational units. That's how it looks like. And we'll set some of that up probably in a couple of weeks. We're gonna actually lab that. I appreciate you, Sergio. Thanks for joining us on the LinkedIn side. All right, Shango, let me know if you need anything else from me. My apologies, I was a little late on that. Shout out to Sergio for joining us. Once again, the organizational units, that's how I was looked. You have your org management account or the master account at the top. Then you have your workloads, infrastructure, security, personal data. A lot of times, if you development shop, you have your development OUs over there. Then underneath there, you have your individual accounts, like you said, your OUs. Then it comes down to your application account. Then your infrastructure OU, you can have a shared service account and networking account. The security, you have your tooling account and your log archive account. Personal data, application account, and data account. So once again, this is how you set up a well-architected accounts using or AWS organizations. And a lot of times when AWS come on site, this is one of the things you should use is once again AWS organization. Then underneath there, we'll talk about that next week is landing zone. Landing zone help you automate a lot of these, and we'll look at some of those. And what sits on top of all of that is AWS control tower. But so let's kind of dig into the underlying services before we get to control tower, so we can have a decent understanding of it. So you following diagrams are high-level explanations of AWS organization units, how you add account, group account, apply policies, enable AWS services inside your organization. So some of the things we're going to touch on once again from an overview perspective. Let's talk about managing AWS accounts. AWS accounts are natural boundaries for permission, security, costs, and workloads. Using a multi-account environment is recommending for best practices. When scaling your cloud environment, you can simplify account creation by programmatically creating new accounts using CLI, Command Line Interface, SDK, or APIs. We look at somebody using the APIs for automated account creation. Define and manage your organization. As you create new accounts, you can group them in organizational units or a group of accounts that serves as a single application and service. Apply tag policies to classify track resources in your organization and provide attribute-based access control for your user application. You can delegate responsibility for supported AWS services to accounts so users can manage them on behalf of your organization. So, and we'll once again look at what that best organization look like. So once again, here it is. You have your OUs, then inside those organization units, you have different accounts. Right, the OU is kind of the grouping of those services and accounts. Then inside those OUs, once again, you have the actual accounts that own objects. Once again, workload, infrastructure, security, personal data. That's kind of some of your standard setups, especially for a smaller company. On top of that, a lot of times you have development, you have production and tests, right? And QA will be another OU at the top, then break it down. Once again, production and tests will be common. Secure and monitor your accounts. You can essentially provide tools and access for security team to manage your security on behalf of your organization. Once again, we did a ton of videos, Amazon Guard Duty, IAM Analyzer, Sensitive Data, Amazon Macy's. So some of those will be in your security tooling LU. Control access and permissions. Set up AWS IAM Identity Center to provide AWS accounts and resource using your Active Directory. Customizing permission based on separate job roles. You can also apply organizational policies to your user accounts or your OUs. We're going to dig a little bit more on that. Service accounts, policies, SCP, can enable you to control access to AWS resources, services, and regions. You can also use resource control policies, enable you to essentially prevent the unintended use of your AWS accounts, chat application policies, Slack, and Microsoft Teams. And once again, we'll look at a few examples of that. So it's your root. We got the OU sandbox. Then inside those OUs, we have the member accounts, account A being service control policies allow actions or services to be allowed. So once again, you can put them on your OU or the particular member and say what services or actions they can provide. So that's where the governors come in. You controlling that. What's up, Ty? Shout out to my man Ty for joining us. So that's where the governors come in, right? So we put those service control policies. Once again, in the production, what can you run? What services are available? And two is you can pretty much lock it down so nobody's running any services that have not been approved. So that's where the governance is. Somebody try to spin up some AI services in AWS, you can have that blocked because you didn't allow it, right? See at the bottom, actions and services are allowed. So if you are Tomcat, Apache, Windows, we would put every service in there, like we will whitelist it. So if a bad guy got in there, they couldn't automatically spin up a service or start running services. Once again, that hasn't been approved to run for your organization. So once again, once we get to a control tower, we're going to actually set some of those up because once again, it's AWS Organization, AWS Landing Zone, and Control Tower builds all of that. But a lot of times I like to talk about the underlying services once again before we get to control tower and start building an organization with SCPs and control panels, control arms, different SCP policies, and different guardrails. And so that's going to be once again, and when we get to control tower. But let's dig a little bit deeper into AWS organization. This is what a system control policy look like. Policy combining two statements that might look like following example, which prevent members' accounts from leaving the organization and allow use of desired AWS services. This organization administrator can detach the full AWS access policy and attach this one. So, but again, at a high level, we're allowing all EC2 operations. That's the star, all the cloud watch operations organization, and any resource can run those. What we're denying is action, organization, and leaving any organization, right? For all your resources, right? So nobody can actually, once again, leave the organization you put them in from the top, right? So once again, you deny anybody leaving, and what you allow EC2, CloudWatch, and organization, everything, right? So you can add, modify that, but they deny somebody leaving, right? So you probably would want, once again, from the root user to be able to leave. But once again, that's what an SCP, service control policy, look like. What you allowing and what you denying, right? So this was kind of interesting because it says organizations, we're going to allow you to do everything, but not really. We're going to block you from leaving, right? So that's kind of, so it's going to go from the top down, allowing. It says, okay, you allow, but if you try to leave, we would block you. So once again, that's what a SCP, service control policy, look like. Shout out to my man Ben Tech. Thanks for joining me. Let's see. AWS handles IP addressing via Route 53 and VPC control panel. Route 53 is usually the DNS that you set up. IP addressing will be handled by your VPC, virtual private cloud. And that's what my man Lab Every Day, he's at AWS setting that up. So yeah, we're actually going to dig a little deeper into VPC and the whole networking address and how you set that up for different regions, different AZs, which is kind of data centers. So we'll definitely look at that. That's definitely my weakest part. So that's definitely on me to get a little better at networking. Shout out to Network, bro. I'm usually on this channel talking about networking. Let's talk about shared resources. AWS shares resources with your organization. AWS Resource Access Manager. You can create Amazon Virtual Private Cloud. We just was talking about that. Subnet once and share those across your organization. You can also essentially agree to software licenses through AWS License Manager and share a catalog of IT service with AWS Service Catalog. Right. So you set up a service catalog. These are the things you as a organization let people use or not use. Right. Then you can put different service catalogs and different OUs. Then those teams can spin up what they need, right, in the control environment. Once again, that'd be a white list of services you let people to do. Audit your environment for compliance. AWS CloudTrail, which is your API logging, which create a log of all activities in your cloud that cannot be turned off or modified by member accounts. In addition, you can set policies to enforce backups on your specified cadence. AWS backups define recommended configuration settings for resources across accounts using AWS regions and AWS config. All right. And then in the T, you want to have AWS CloudWatch and your CloudTrail to be logging all the things you need to be logging. We talked about that in AWS config, especially from this 800-53. What are the requirements inside your AWS organization that you need to be satisfied to be NIST 800-53 compliant? And these are some of the things we can do from a AWS org to make sure those things get set and nobody can change them, right? We can use those SCP policies and like, hey, we set CloudTrail on, we set on CloudWatch, and nobody can cut those off, right? Except the manager of those accounts in your top AWS organization. Once again, we'll look at that in a little more detail. Centralized billing is cool because you got a lot of accounts, or you billing per account, because a lot of teams like to do per account because those are divisions, right? So you can have each division. But a lot of times, too, people want to pay them from a company standpoint. And two, if you're buying different saving plans or buying resources, you can share them throughout your organization to make sure you get those cost savings. Organization provides you with a single consolidated bill. In addition, you can view usage from resources across accounts, track costs with your AWS Cost Explorer, and optimize usage of your compute resources with AWS Compute Optimizer. Right, they got one for compute, which is Lambda database. Or if you're EC2s, that's just a big one. They got an EC2 Compute Optimizer. All right, because you log in and look in AWS Cloud, watching logs, and say, okay, you've been 100%. You probably need a bigger EC2. You need more memory, right? So it'll help you optimize that to make sure you get savings, and performance balance. So those are the things you can do with, once again, AWS, or with the centralized managed billing and costs. As part of that is you get to optimize your compute resources. Managing organizational units with AWS Organization. We were looking at the OU. We'll see OU's group accounts together to administer as a single unit. This greatly simplifies the management of your accounts. For example, you can attach a policy to control an OU, and all the accounts with your OU automatically inherit that policies. You can create multiple OUs within a single organization. You can create OUs within other OUs. Each OU can contain multiple accounts and can move accounts from one OU to another. However, OU names must be unique within your parent OU in the root. It's talking about the following diagram. Once again, you see the root management account. Then you have your organizational units. Those are the different accounts. Then once again, we have our SCP policies. What are we going to let people do in those particular organizational units? And once again, we're going to really lab that probably in next week. Start really setting those up. I just don't want to do it now because I want Control Tower to spin up my AWS organization and my landing zone. So I want to talk about those separate. Then once again, they're control towers. They're well architected, best of breed, what you should set up as a company. So that's the reason I didn't really set up the organizational units. We're going to do that when we do that bigger and control tower. I should have tried to set up an organization unit and delete it, but I was like, yeah, I want to mess up my account. It's not the best account to begin with. In the end, I probably end up blowing it up and restarting it all over anyway. But once again, organizational units, how AWS wants you to set up your company. It's similar to AD where you have OUs. In the OUs, you can set up security here. Our security is SCP, security control policy. And also we have a resource policy, right? You talk about services, then what resources are you using in there, right? So, and as we dig deeper, not today, but setting those up, those different policies, and what do we mean when we set those up? All right, again, that's where your governance comes in. Managing member accounts with organization unit. A member account is an AW account other than a management account that's part of your organization. For a member account, use a naming structure and email address that reflect account's usage. For example, workload, FUA development, for the workloads, workloads for the B. If you have custom tags defined for your organization, we recommend you assign those tags on accounts that reflects account usage, cost center environment, and projects. This is make it easier to identify, organize, and search for your accounts. That's one thing too, is we want to automatically build that. And once again, once we get to Control Tower, we're going to talk about automatically building an account, putting in account usage, putting it in the account center, putting it in a certain project, right? So then it's easy for you to trace, either for you to do that consolidated billing. It's consolidated, but we want to figure out what division, what program staff, and what project is spending the most money, right? To make sure they're in line with the value they're bringing. Efficiently scale your environment and account usage. Use your scale before creating new accounts. Make sure your accounts for similar needs do not already exist to avoid unnecessary duplication. AWS accounts should be based on common access requirements. If you're planning to reuse the account, such as the sandbox account equivalent, we recommend you clean up unneeded resource or workloads from the accounts, but save the account for future use. Before closing the account, note that they are subject to close account quota limits too. So, what quota limits you have, and two, you want to close those to make sure you get those back and available to other accounts that's doing that similar type of work. Use cases: a member account, an AWS account other than management account. I see. That looked like I duplicated that. Let's talk about the uses. We looked at the tools there. Provide tools and access for your security team while encouraging development. Create a security group provided with read-only access to all your resources to identify and mitigate security concerns. You can allow the group to manage Amazon Guard duties so they can actively monitor and mitigate threats. Also, AWS config, that's my favorite one because it tells you the percentage you are with a certain compliance. Shout out to Shango, that could be PCI, NIST 800, CMMC, HIPAA High Trust. It'll tell you what's your findings and what's your level of compliance for that particular compliance. Share common resources. Once again, Active Directory, AWS Directory, centralized identity store. Share critical resources across your accounts. Share your AWS directory for Active Directory as a central identity store. Uh, AWS Service Catalog to share services and designated accounts so users can quickly discover and deploy them. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, the VPC, subnets by centrally defining them once and sharing them across your organization using AWS Resource Access Manager. So I might have multiple development teams, but I got them all in one subnet and one VPC. All right, I might have a three-tier network, and I put all my development teams in this one network. Why would I do that? To reuse resources. And a lot of times, when I was at DoD, development teams call each other. Like we were doing an accounting system, so we have a AP accounts payable would call accounts receivable. All right, we had a general ledger. All right, so those different services call each other. So sometimes you want to replicate that and put them all in one VPC, or you might start. We call it DUT, developer unit test. Maybe you want to put individual teams in smaller VPCs, then have an integrated test in another account. Right, then they get promoted from test. QA, then we had something called model office, meaning it looked like production, then put it in production. So once again, there's a number of ways to do your organizational units, but once again, sharing, they get their consolidated billing. And two, once again, how do you want to set up your organization? Let me know if you have any questions. Put them in the box. It could be tech or cybersecurity. PBO will try to answer them. A lot of people here know you can get me in Discord or just shoot me an email. Shout out to my man Shango. I was a little late. I got to do a better job checking my email. PBO be tired sometimes. He getting old. So let's look at this service land real quick. It talks about account vending machine. When a new user comes on board, how do you give them account? Right. So a lot of times they come on board. Their manager will pick their job responsibility, and this service right here will build their account, give them everything they need access to in the cloud, on-prem. It could be multi-cloud. Like security, he gets, like they said, you get read access into everything in AWS and Azure. You get read access to Active Directory on-prem. But once again, you want to manually set that up. You want to hit a button and have that automatically create those accounts. So let's quickly, which I didn't set up yet. Let's look at there. It was an easier. Once again, put any questions in the chat. We're just going to spin up. Look at this quick article. I thought it was just pretty good. It was simple. he get his GitHub out there. So let's look at that real quick. Looks like PPO is gonna make it short today. He's tired. I'll drop that link in the chat if you wanted to go see it. So I'll probably lab it in the near future. Let's make that a little bigger. So you see it, it's in serverless land. It's something I go through. I'm trying to get into more serverless. A lot of people or a lot of big companies are using serverless. What does that mean? It means you create a function or a code, you create a container. Then once you create it, the cloud vendor will spin up infrastructure underneath. You don't manage it, but it'll manage it. So like Lambda is basically a procedure or function. You put your Java code in there, your Python, your PHP. Once you spin it out to production, publish it, then once the user hit it, being a web page or API, it'll spin up the hardware underneath to run that. Be it Amazon Linux 2, or if it's Windows, it'll spin up Windows infrastructure. Then once that function gets done running, once again, be PHP, Python, Java. They have a ton of things out there. Then once it spins it up, the cloud vendor is once again responsible for the infrastructure underneath. So you see it right there, account vending machine. This talks about the workflow to create a new account with new and existing organizational unit. It takes a CloudFormation template. Template is supposed to include any standard baseline configuration guardrails that you would typically use. CloudFormation basically is infrastructure as code, or once again, it's going to call the API for AWS CloudFormation. So here it says get organizational root, create a new organizational root. We were looking at those organizations. So if you was creating a new development team organization, it would create it. If not, it would just look up the one that was there. It lists the organizational units, loops over all of those. Is this the OU? Gets the OU ID for you. Gets the OU detail, creates your new account right there. Waits 30 seconds for it to build, gets the account new status, checks the status, move the account to the OU. We were looking at the OUs. Create the stack. So what's the stack? That's CloudFormation. It says this is the users. This is the services I need to access, being a Java, Oracle, EC2, Lambda. It'll give me everything from that CloudFormation. That's actually just code. It's saying, once again, this is the infrastructure I need to build. This is the OUs I need to create. And this is the job responsibilities. These are the services for my job response. The cool thing is I'm not going to look in there. I put in the chat. It has a lot of that built in the GitHub. So in a future stream, we'll dig into GitHub and actually run it and see what it looks like. Once again, I don't want to build AWS organization because I'm gonna have control tower do that, and that's gonna be the overarching best practices what AWS says. So it's gonna be build my AWS organizational units. It's called a landing zone. Um, it's called a landing zone. So when you come in as a user, what services, where you're gonna land, and what rights, and once again, what automation builds is once again when you file in there. And two is once again, we're gonna pull this code out of GitHub and look at it. Shout out to my man, he's a senior technical account manager from AWS. So you begin some real AWS experience looking at that AWS. And I was actually in an interview. Somebody actually asked me this question about building accounts. So I've used accounts. I've had accounts built for me. I just never created the automation used for building accounts. What works good. You can use any AV. I actually use their AV. Their AV is guard duty and inspector. So they have a couple ones. I did one on inspector, so that's their built-in. But I've seen people use the normal ones. I was gonna say Rapid7 has some. Nexus has some vulnerabilities in there. Windows Defender, you can use Windows Defender because if you run in Windows, it's gonna look like just a Windows VM. So you could use your number one. Oh shit. That's a good question. Let me figure that out, sir. Sergi Barreras. I'm usually in Simply Cybers and study GRCs. Reach out to me on Discord. I'll get those links to you for those groups, Sergio. Just ping me on Discord. Just say you want the couple ones I'm in, and I'll send you those out. I'm usually in 3 of those. Two is let me know what you're interested in. Simply Cyber is more GRC. Study GRC is study GRC. Shout out to my man Jaime. He does PCI. Shout out to KevTech. He does help desk. So let me know which kind of Discord you want, or if you want all the Discords, I can do that for you. So let me know what you're interested in. Yeah, give me a DM. Give me a couple days. I used to teach. I'm a little light, but yeah, ping me if it takes me longer than 48 hours. Ping me, but I'll get that to you. Any conflicts between the two? I don't think so, but I use vulnerability management. I don't really set those up, Ty, to be honest. So that's interesting. I don't think so, but once again, I usually use those. I usually don't set those up at work. Most of the jobs I've ever worked on use Rapid7 for their vulnerability. So I think that's a good price, and they do cloud and on-prem and everything. Two is a lot of times, of course, Windows Defender, Patch Tuesday, a lot of times they won that particular one. So that's really all I had tonight. Once again, just kind of hitting AWS Organizations. SCP, that's where the governors come in. We're going to dig into that. So set up what teams can do, what teams cannot do. Service control catalog. This is what they can use. And two, if onboarding and offboarding, what would they look like? My man right here, Senior Technical Manager. We can run his account vending machine. I never really liked that term, but a lot of people, that's what they call it. Account vending machine and what that would look like. Then two is from a GRC perspective and governance, what would that look like too? So once again, I'll hang out. That's all I want to do, touch a little bit. You can always check out my replay. Most people know I'm a NIST guy, so I have probably 70 hours of a playlist with compliance in it. NIST 800-53, NIST 171, CMMC, HIPAA High Trust. I did the new one, TIGX, talking about the car industry. I had a great conversation. Somebody asked me a few questions on that, so I want to make sure I had an understanding of cybersecurity in the car industry. So I'm pretty versed in a lot of security. That's just one I haven't heard of. So once again, I'll hang out a little longer. I don't know. I've just been tired lately. Just how we do it. Cybersecurity tech questions. Put them in the chat. I'm usually with Study GRC. I was on their CISP study group. They usually have AMA call where they answer our questions. I think that's going to be this Friday. I think I'm backing up B-dubs on that, so you'll see me on AMA. Noon Eastern time on Friday. So I don't know if I'm gonna get marquee again like I did. They put me on the marquee last time. I was kind of a little shocked. I'm like, oh, I'm on the marquee. I have to show up. Once again, most people know me. I've been in tech for 30 plus years. I've been in cybersecurity for 15 plus years. I've done everything from, I actually started out as a programmer for a decade. Then I switched over to admin, Oracle, DBA, different technologies. So now I'm in a GRC, focusing on NIST 800-53 and IRS Pub 1075. So I work with development teams, making sure they're doing the right compliance, hardening, OWASP top 10. Make sure you got your configuration management, incident response plan. So what would that look like from a GRC perspective, right? We don't want to get in the way of the money to stop teams from making money. We just want to make sure we're secure and compliant. A lot of times I'm in the federal space, so they'll come out and check your infrastructure to make sure you're compliant with those hardening and compliance from a policy, procedure, plans, and to CIS hardening, STIG hardenings, schisms hardening. So what security checks do you put on your infrastructure to, once again, to make sure they pass those tests. Okay, my man, being tech, when you complete this audit, does the audit usually cover one control family at a time? Oh no, we usually do them all at the same time. If I do an internal audit, I might do them one at a time. But usually, if we get audited by the government, they want to see all 20 of them, right? So, and that's where I did one on AWS config. It'll scan your setup to see what control families are compliant. Once again, if you're using AIM, it'll scan, says, okay, you're using AWS AIM, but you didn't set a password complexity length, right? You would fail. Logging, you're not logging to CloudWatch and log analytics, right? So it'll go through and go through each one. No, if I'm doing an internal one, I'll do them. But when you get audited, no, they want to see them out because you try to get an ATO, an authority to operate. Oh yeah, Tenable's great. That's definitely a good move, man. You can't go wrong with Tenable, which is Nexus, right? Tenable's top notch. A lot of time I do a lot of Iris work. Iris use Nexus, so we right on that Tenable bandwagon because we want to use the same tools they're using now. So that Tenable, definitely what it is. So I'm actually want to do a Tenable scan and an AWS scan and put all that inside Power Builder, inside Office 365, like Power Builder, because you're gonna have findings from your workstations, servers, app servers, hybrid, cloud, right? So where do you consolidate all that for your auditors? Because your auditors come in, right? They want to see all that in one spot. Then they might want to go out and check to make sure you're not making it up, right? But now Tenable's definitely the way to go for that, for the set. Once again, setting that up. That Nexus product's good product, a little pricey though, a little pricey. You gotta have a little bit of good cover. Once again, I see a little Rapid7. My big customers will use Nexus. My middle customers probably will use Rapid7. My smaller customers, they're gonna be on that whole Windows world, right? But even if you decide the AWS, you can spin up Windows VMs. Shout out to my man GMR. I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm kind of winding down. I done did that. PBO a little grumpy, trying to go on a diet. PBO not happy. I'm talking to the third person, but we do all that at one time. I'm trying to get my course ready, Ben Tech, so we can walk through what that would look like. But I've got a ton of videos. If you go on my playlist, I got a ton of NIST 800 videos. I think I did one for a small company. We talked about going through, I think it was 18 families, but going through 18 families. And inside there is probably 6 plans: configuration management plan, incident response plan, COOP plan, big company succession plan. If you're a helicopter go down, who's going to take over for you, right? So there's about 5 or 6 bigger plans. Then there's the tech part. What are we hardening? How are we hardening? CIs checks. Then in there, like my man talked about, where's your vulnerability scans at? Where's your compliance scans at? Those should be actually programs. Patch tools, they should be part of that vulnerabilities. Right, here's the open vulnerabilities. These patch close them. These are still open. So what is your program and what's your documentation look like to set those plans up, right? And so those are some things I need to get in my course. I'm struggling. I've just been tired lately to get back on that. But I think he brought that up. And once again, Ben Tech, what would that look like? But now internally, when I do internal stuff to get the company ready, we're doing by individual control families. But when we get an audit, they're hitting everything. But once again, if I'm doing internal, especially for a smaller company, you're right, I might do it. Okay, let's go over AC, let's go over logging, let's go over SI. Supply chain's real big because the Kaseya's hit, right? So, two is it depends on the maturity of the organization I work with, right? If you're smaller, I might, ease you into. If you're a big one, you probably got all those plans, and you just bringing me into because I got some findings and some things you really want me to dig into. But once again, shoot a couple more questions, then PBO gonna lay down. I think I'm gonna do a little AWS studying. I'm getting ready to take probably AWS cert probably in a couple weeks. So Facts. Yeah, there's some out there. If you go to the NIST, I'll find it real quick. Uh, yeah, that's why I was kind of getting my course ready. I was going to try to take that to the next level for that NIST being tech. So here, I'll put them in the link. Here, let's go look at that spreadsheet real quick, then we'll shut it down. Get Ben Tech his answer. I put it in there for you. There it is. So if you look to the right, you have your control catalog spreadsheet right there. I think that'll be your total controls. If you're upgrading from 853, it'll show you what controls were added or subtracted. If you look specifically for privacy, 800 crosswalk to ISO. Shout out to my man. I've been doing a little more ISO, so that would be the crosswalk I would do. These couple control tabulations. So if you look to the right, I think if you do the control catalog, that should be all. Let's go ahead and open it up. I'm here now. Let's see if it'll open it up inside the sheet. Here it is. Let's see if it's all of them. I don't want to guess, even though I'll be guessing. Yeah, that's it. Let's share that spreadsheet for my man Ben Tech. Then we'll shut it on down. So that was the control sheet. So if you look here, this has all the controls. It tells you how to test them, discussions about them. Let me make sure they're showing up on my screen correctly. Let's make that a little bigger for the old people, aka me. That's what he was talking about, out of control. So that's AC 2, 3, 4. Oh man, it's going through all of them. ACs. I thought I was going to do AC, then break them down. AC 10. Oh my God, that's probably going to be. So AC, is that just? No, that's all of them. We took AT, which is training, literacy and training. So let's see how many controls is here. I'm only going to say it's 1,000. So that's the big boy sheet being tech. So that's the stuff I want to talk about. I'm talking about in my course. I need to get it done. I want to say there was 1,100 controls. So there's all the controls, right? So I always said it's the big boy sheet, right? So hell, we had 1,200, 1,190, even 1,200 controls being tech. So PBO sent you the big boy sheet. You'll see it right there. That was the SP 853R5 control catalog. That shows you all. I'm just going to round it up 1,200 controls. You're welcome. So PBO is about that life. So in my course, hopefully, we're going to start touching on each one of the families. I don't know if I'm going to touch all 1,200, but I probably touch what I would consider the top 10. But yeah, so that's it. That you see a bunch of spreadsheets, but once again, that's the control. Then if you look at the test, it shows you how to test those controls. Component authenticity. Let's pull that down. Develop and implement an anti-counterfeit policy and procedure that includes means to detect and prevent counterfeit components from entering the system. Report counterfeit system components to the source for the counterfeit components. Organizationally defined external reporting. We report that to the IRS because that probably would be an incident. We figure out we have fake components by China that's probably sending our information back to China. That was the 1186 component authenticity. The weird thing is I actually thought about that from a cloud perspective. That wouldn't be us. AWS would take care of that, and Azure would take care of that. We would inherit that control from the cloud. Now, if we got our own data center, we would have to figure out. But two, if we order from CDW, Dell, one of those big vendors, we would get a certification, attestation, or we would get how they would be actually taking those controls. Oh, I'm all up for the questions. You'll be able to find me. Check us out AMA, study GRC. But yeah, that's the big boy 1200 from NIST 800-53 R5. That's why I always say it's the big brother. So come on out and get that 1200 1200 security families out there. Once again, we were looking at that 1186 component authenticity. We probably would inherit that from our cloud vendor, right? Their job would be to make sure what they're building a cloud vendor, they wouldn't get parts from Huawei or what the government would consider a hostile nation, right? And once again, everybody know I'm an AWS guy, especially in our AWS Gov and their East and West as FedRAMP. So most of that work's it's already been audited. You just need to inherit those controls from AWS or Azure. Right? That's one of the reasons you would go to the cloud. But once again, my man Ben Tech wanted all the controls. We're gonna send him an easy 1200 so he can read some of those tonight and get a good night's sleep. Those controls gonna put him to sleep. Once again, I hang out for a couple more minutes. So once again, most people know I'm a NIST 800-53 guy. I've been doing it for about 17 years off and on. Most jobs I work with, they hire me because of NIST 800-53. The IRS uses NIST 800-53 and put their hardenings and controls over top of NIST. So I've been doing NIST and a former NIST once again for about 20 plus years. So it's a big compliance. There's a lot of pieces of it. I usually work with mostly the hardening, working with the development teams, and working with the cloud infrastructure teams. Because a lot of GRC people aren't super technical. Compliance director makes me go out and make sure they're doing their proper checks. OWASP top 10. If we're doing API securities, if we're doing the SaaS, where those IPs come from that SaaS to make sure nobody's spoofing. Once again, what that security looks like from a federal perspective too. I tell people I do federal work, so that's kind of how I make my living. Usually I work for a private company doing federal work. So when I was at the state of Indiana, I was consulting, right? So once again, I always worked in the private sector. And I tell people that's a hidden gem. I know we got a lot of upheaval with this administration, but that too shall pass. So let's see what my man Christopher Young says. Don't let this hard charger fool anyone. He's always getting on a very wise. I appreciate you, Chris. I ain't seen you in a while, man. Hopefully you're doing well, man. I just been doing this so long, but I appreciate you. So once again, I want like my man Ben Tech, he knows where I'm at. I'm easily found. I'm usually in Study GRC, Simply Cyber, different people Discords. I try to make myself available. If people want to ask me questions. Most people know I usually can ask their question off my dome or with 15 minutes of research. So a lot of times it usually don't take a lot for me to do that research. So once again, I just like to add my value to the community. Because I once too was starting out from, I appreciate you. I once too was starting out from ground zero in 1988, 1990. All right, I got my computer science degree in 1990. So I've been in this game a long time. Once again, start off as a programmer. Actually, programming is my first love. I just make a little better money in GRC and security. I think over the last couple of years, though, I think security was making a little more money than, programming started making a little more money in security. Right, because most of those tech companies was developing Google and AWS and Facebook. In the earlys, it was security made a little more money than programming, right? But tech's been super good to me, so I can't complain. It's gonna be interesting to see, and I'm gonna talk about that. How's AI, cloud, chat GPT, and those different AI things, and what's that's gonna do to programming, what's that's gonna do to cybersecurity, what's that gonna do to the industry? So I think that's a interesting question. Once again, put you a couple more questions in. PBO Green, go lay down. He's getting old, but I'll be 58 this year for people that don't know. So I'm getting up there. One of my grandbabies going to college, so that lets you know I'm getting up there. Shout out to the grandbabies going to college. So Once again, Shango knows. ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. I'm mad at Shango. You should have pinged me, Shango. I didn't know your email was out there. You've been on a number of live streams, Shango. Just ping me in the chat. Just be like, PBO, go look at your email. Help me out a little bit, Shango. PBO get a little old, so you know I ain't trying to forget you, Shango. So you gotta help me a little bit, man. Just tell me to go look at my email. So uh but once again, ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. I taught for 10 years at a local university, so give me a couple days, 48 hours to look at the email. If not, come in one of these chats and say, PBO, look at your email. So I'm not ignoring anybody. Sometimes PBO just get busy, got a lot going on my grind too, man. On my grind. It's ugly out here. On my grind. But once again, I can't complain. Oh, let's see. That's a good tip. When I was at the state, we were using Sentinel. We were using log analytics. We was doing Cusco queries. Shout out to my man Tiny. I started it, but he took it over. He was getting into cybersecurity. He wanted to do our dashboard, so definitely familiar with log analytics. Then that Sentinels put that at those MITRE checks on top of that. So no, that's definitely a good skill to have, and we know Microsoft's dominating. I think Microsoft is going to pass AWS in the next 5 years, percentage-wise. I think you need to learn both of them, but I think it was 22%. I think when Chris looked at it. So I said in the next 5 years, I think that'll switch. The reason why is I think everybody's going to Office 365, AFDS, which is Active Directory in the cloud. So I think they're going to get that big jump there. But Azure, AWS, even Google, get you some cloud skills, pick one of them. And as you master it, try to get in that multi-cloud skills. That's really where the money, because especially a lot of bigger companies, they're definitely multi-cloud. So I'm trying to start on my Azure stuff and I see a lot of companies, which is amazing me in the United States. They're going ISO. So I think I'm going to dip my toe in a little ISO. I see people asking ISO questions. I usually send them to my man, Chris H. But I need to get a little better than that. But yeah, there's definitely good skills, though. Let's definitely see what there. That was me putting I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. When you said something about crosswalk to ISO, is that really? Yep, it is. It is BenTech. Don't go too in depth. Just curious. No, yeah, that's it. Because a lot of times Fed, that's one thing I like NIST. They're gonna crosswalk you to PCI. They got crosswalks to HIPAA High Trust, which is NIST 66, and they'll show you crosswalk from NIST 800-53 to ISO. I think it was 2701. Let me see. Did they say what the crosswalk was for ISO? I thought I looked at it. Yep, it's 2701 and 2701 for 2022. So yep, that was a crosswalk. Yep, he's correct. But yeah, BenTech, that's the crosswalk. So it shows you your policies and procedures. It'll show you which one of those maps to ISO. Then it shows you the gap if you need to add some, or if they have some that they didn't cover in the NIST part. Which I think last time I looked, I think it was like two smaller ones they didn't have covered, but they do have the 2022 out there. I haven't looked. I don't think I've looked at it that recently. Oh, you're welcome. I can't help you with the ISO part. I can show you the cross map. A lot of people reach out to me, and that's why I said a good thing about NIST is if you have, I hate this term, if you harmonize, because especially a lot of global and Fortune 500 companies I work for some, they doing NIST, HIPAA, High Trust, CJIS, because they doing stuff for the state police and FBI. If you're a state agency, you doing stuff. A lot of people know I work for Department of Revenue. Department of Revenue is the tax collector. So if you get a state tax and you owe the state police a ticket, no tax revenue for you. you owe your baby mama some child support, no tax return for you, right? You owe your college some money, no state tax return for you. So I got to learn different compliances as we start sending different files and collecting money for different state agencies. So that's kind of helped me get my harmonizing and understanding different compliances because we were sending different files to different state agencies. So I had to make sure from an IRS perspective and their perspective, we were covering them with their security, and what they're sending us wouldn't break our security. Like if they weren't using the right TLS, if there was secure copying, but once again, they wasn't using the right ciphers, right? So you got to make sure their security is not breaking your security. And once again, Department of Revenue, which is state taxes, you collect for the rest of the state. So I sent to a lot of different state agencies that I had to look at their compliances and their security. So that's how I became kind of decent in a lot of different securities. So let's see. I recently took the free ISO course. So I began really learning about controls that overlap with other kinds. Oh yeah, they all overlap. They all overlap. I was looking at AWS actually has an audit manager, and that's part of their audit manager. So instead of saying this is NIST compliant, this is HIPAA compliant, it says this is encryption. This is compliant with NIST, CMC, HIPAA, right? So that control is compliant with all these compliances. So instead of looking at the compliance, you said this control, right? So instead of looking at the compliance, you say this control, and you see what compliances that control satisfied, right? This TLS 1.3, it's got to be AS 128 or above. So that control satisfies all these compliance. So you stop doing it at a compliance level, you start doing it at a control level, Ben Tech. I've never done it that way, but I always done it at the compliance. But I think I'm gonna start getting to that as, like I said, where I work for companies that does, especially large companies that will do multiple compliances. So take that control out from NIST, and it's in NIST, HIPAA, CMC. So what is the high level of those controls that if I do that, that control is valid for all the other controls? Let me know if that makes sense there. Ben Tech, I think I'm rambling a little bit. How is the GovTech job market these days? It's sucking, Regine. It's sucking. The reason, I mean, everybody knows why it's sucking. I think Doge is laying off a lot of people. CISA got decimated, which I didn't think that would ever happen. Right. So I think GovTech from that perspective is down. I think what's going to happen is, and I'm just guessing, Regine, I think a lot of that's going to push to the state. Like we reported to the IRS, they tell the state what to do. If the federal can't do it, they're going to push that work down to the state, right? So I don't think they're going to have many jobs they had in the Fed, but I think a lot of work is going to the state, and I think the big consulting companies are going to pick a lot of that up. The cool thing is, I think not cool. I think in the next regime change, I think whoever picks that up is going to try to rebuild all of that. Because I mean, VAs, you find a lot of veterans, you find a lot of cybersecurity people, you find a lot of state workers too, federal workers that worked in certain states. So that's going to be interesting regime. But right now, I think tech, especially GovTech, is in a recession. I will reach out to a couple other people and ask them their perspective on it. But I just think tech is in a recession. Now, if you got a certain skill set, if you AI, ML, that's hot. I still see a lot of GRC jobs. I see less remote jobs out there, and I see a lot of people applying for what remote jobs sit there. People are not trying to go back in the office again, learn all these tools with my internship in Microsoft Defender. That's a good ploy. I would pick about 3 or 4 as fair and dig into it and try to become SME level, but definitely have an understanding of a lot of tools because companies use a lot of different tools. But Microsoft Defender, ESET, those are standard Microsoft tools that majority of shops are going to use. And I'm actually a Linux guy. Like focusing on most common controls will be applicable most organizations, trying to really good at assessing those, help me bring value. No, 100% Ben Tech, and we can definitely dig into that. And what does assessing look like? The thing is most companies that I've seen doing federal work or state work, they're drilling on a certain compliance because they're trying to do that work, right? Department of Revenue reports to the IRS, so we're gonna do IRS Pub 1075. That's what we're gonna post because that's what we're gonna get audited on, and they're gonna every 3 years they come on site, right? So I worked for a smaller company. They were doing state work and government work. they did NIST and they had some HIPAA, so they didn't worry about harmonizing. They said this is what we're selling our services on, and this is what the client's going to judge on. So, but I see what you're saying with common, but I will pick some and master it, Ben Tech, before I go to the common control. My 2 cents, reach out to some other people and get their thing on it. So if you think of overlap, looks for a couple code, each and every GRC framework, inventory gear, you can try it. No, true. You're welcome. I appreciate that, Chris. Yep, we be in Discord a lot. What does it look like, a chop board next to you? No, that's my PBO sign. Somebody gave me a PBO sign. Shout out to my man Tiny. So when I cut it on, though, it's too bright. But that's somebody gave me a PBO sign. When I left a particular client, I was there for 11 years. Shout out to them. They gave me a Yeti mic and a PBO sign. So definitely shout out to them. Shoot a couple more questions. We're a little past 10, a little hour. I definitely see y'all in the AMA on Monday. Study GRC, noon Eastern time. I'll be up there with B Dubs. She definitely running. I think she's the vice president of Study GRC. PBO just giving her a hand, doing big things. So PBO be on there, get a little lunch, and come right back. All right. Well, I'm out. Everybody have a good night. I want to appreciate you. My man, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll send you those Discords. ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. Don't be like Shango. If I don't answer you a couple days and you see me on one of these lives, just ping me and tell me go look at my email. PBO know he need to be a little more organized. He out there struggle streaming. Once again, I appreciate everybody for joining me. I'm out. I see you on these cybersecurity streets, Discord, LinkedIn.